Here was Yoga, age 18, a student at the academy studying to be a social science worker working with foster children and delinquent children. And she put aside her education. Surely this work took precedence, which means this work with the resistance replaced your education work, did it? Or were you able to continue with the schooling for a little while?
I continued more or less, and my friends, well, they kept their books, and they taught me when I went to the colleges, of course. Mm-hmm. But well, it was in between. It just depended on when my help was needed, and for girls it was easier than for boys to move around in Holland.
And you did most of this.
Boys from 18 years old on, they were sent to Germany to work
absolutely,
there.
for the
so
work camps.
For boys and men it was very difficult to move around in Holland. So that's why they took us girls to do the work. Yeah.
So the education was sort of a cover for you.
Yes. Yes.
And you delivered packages and parcels throughout Holland and even crossing the border to Belgium?
And it was like a snowball. I made the parcels and the packages became people who had to go into hiding.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and there were about in Holland who had a population of 8 million then. There were 200,000 people in hiding, and those were, well, all sorts of people. Of course, resistance people too, but Jewish people, military people, all sorts of people who had to go into hiding. And 200,000 is a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there were about 3,000 shot down aircrew members who were for shorter or longer time at the same home with other people who were in hiding. So that they were in a house alone. They were always Jewish people or some police officers or military people or young men into hiding.
How did you get your messages about, give us an example.
Of course, how did I get to the shot down Allied aircraft weapon?
Yeah.
Well, the first time I was asked, because in resistance work you are asked, you never say yourself, I want to go into resistance. I mean, you are asked. Yeah. I was asked to bring down to the border, to the Belgian border, an English pilot by a student I knew, because all the resistance workers were friends or people you trusted, people you knew.
But did you have meetings together? You never would have group meetings.
By telephone.
It would be too dangerous.
That was too dangerous, and you got your orders by telephone. I mean, I got some books for you. Could you bring them down to my niece,
Yes.
down south? Or I got some, mostly it were books, but sometimes it were rabbits or whatever.
Yes, Teeny told us about that. The farmers, when an airman was shot down, the farmer would say, I have 3 rabbits.
Yeah.
Can someone use them?
Can you use them? Yeah.
So you would
not
know.
To eat, of course.
So talk about the Englishman and how that went.
That was Elliot McVitie, I still know his name. And
a Scot.
I fetched him in, he was already interrogated, he had his identity card, he had his clothes. That was just in the beginning, because
he was interrogated by the underground.
By
we should
the
tell
other people.
the listeners to be sure.
I didn't know. But the student I knew, who had been at the same school, because I had lots of friends at school, who it appeared after the war and during the war, they were in the resistance too. So that was very nice.
But the interrogation by the underground was necessary to be sure that this person was not a spy.
Yeah, later on when I I had to interrogate the shutdown. That's what you mean, huh? How we
Yes,
did
yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah.
But you said this man had already been interrogated, and you mean
Yeah, we had
interrogated by
list
the
with funny
underground.
questions, and on top of the list there was a picture of a gremlin. I don't know if you know what a gremlin is. It is a funny, yeah, I have the list there. It's a funny animal with his two claws over the wall and a face with ears and some hair sticking out. Yeah.
Uh-huh. So what were you
And
asking?
on the airfields in England, where all the Americans and Canadians were stationed, the gremlin was a sort of being you could put all guilt on. I mean, when your shoelaces did break, they would say, oh, that's the gremlin.
I
When
see.
they couldn't find their barracks in the dark, they said, oh, well, the gremlin hit my barrack, or whatever. So that's the gremlin. So when they started laughing at the gremlin,
You knew.
I would, in first moment, I would know they are all right, but they had to answer all the other questions too.
Name
They had
and
to
rank.
give their dog tag number, because we had wireless people who had contact with England to check if name and the dog
Right.
tag number was all right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And all the other members were, well, it was just Air Force slang. Very funny questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put up a block, a black, a paddle foot, a shaky do.
Yeah.
Those are Air Force lingo.
Air Force slang on the
Okay, so that's the interrogation,
Yeah.
to be sure.
So if that was all right, and their dog tag and number and name was checked in England, it was all right, and then we got them clothes, identity papers, and then we always needed a photographer, of course, for the photos. And we needed a hiding place, another hiding place, before we could take them down south to one of the border places where they put the lands of the Belgium underground.
Mhm.
So,
And wait,
the way we knew where to find them, that was, for me that was very easy, because my father worked at the police station in Zeist, where the Germans had their office too. Messages
He stole telex messages.
out of the waste paper basket,
And
or out of the office.
And
all
what
those
did
telex
he-
messages, there was exactly, they were long, dark grey, very smelly papers which rolled out of the machine. The hour and the date and the type of plane and how many aircrew members escaped, or how many died, or how many came down by parachute.
the Germans knew this.
Exactly the date and on the minute the plane was shot down. Yeah.
Why did they ever throw those away?
No, and because they wanted to catch them, of course.
Yeah.
But then I found the people who I knew from other work, from parcels and other things.
That's, wait a
Uh,
minute,
Yeah,
that's how you found the people.
yeah. From there is
From
an
those
Halifax, or
telexes
an
which
American
were in the-
bomber came down at 6:40 this morning, and near Hasselterdijk, and they would say, yes, I heard about it, I will go and look. And so they searched along at the farms or at the church, if somebody had found a missing persons,
Yeah.
of course. And then they would get them to a safe house, their
Yeah.
first safe house, and there I would interrogate them. And then they were moved to another safe house, or
Right.
safe house.
Yeah,
Sometimes it was a house next to Germans.
yeah.
And then we had to tell them not to pull the chain of the W too often, because that would
The
They would
WC,
suspect.
the toilet,
they would suspect
if it were
the
being
house
used.
next door where the W just was used 20 times a day. I mean,
Right,
that's
yeah.
very suspected.
Well, and those people who provided safe houses were endangering themselves,
Of course.
their life, taking their
And
life in
mostly
their
they
hands.
had already people in hiding, like my parents. They had they had, of course, my brother and my foster brother, who were 16 and 18 then, who had to go into hiding. We had a Jewish girl in hiding. And sometimes, when I couldn't get another address, or the line was blocked, or there was something, they were wounded or very confused, I took them to my parents' house, but not too often, because my father had his own resistance work and I didn't want to put that in danger.
Okay, we're going to backtrack in our circle and make a loop. Just a minute, back to the beginning, because it has just come to Yoka, the poem that she etched into the wall of the prison with the head of the paperclip. She remembers it now, and she will repeat it for us slowly.
To see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wildflower, to hold eternity in the palm of your hand, and in an hour,
One phrase missing, but we get the
Yeah.
idea of it.
Yeah.
How you must have longed to see the world and just to see a slice of outside
Yeah.
when you're in solitary confinement, because you couldn't see outside.
No. There was up high, there was some sort of barred window, but no, you couldn't see outside.
So we'll come back at the end of our story, or not the end, because that's no place to end in the prison.
Yeah.
We'll pick up our story when
You
we
can
were.
get it out for the.
Yeah, we were talking about the English, how Yoga helped the English people, airmen who were shot down to cross the Belgian line. And here's a wonderful photo, amazingly taken, of the Belgian-Dutch border with the Nazi German guard. And this is one way, I don't know how this is going to photograph, but we'll have a lot of light on it. This is one place that they were able to cross the Belgian border because there were a group of monks who were in
a monastery.
a monastery.
Monastery in Holland, but they worked in schools and hospital in Belgium.
So they had
to
free
cross the border
crossing.
every day.
And they were helpful to you people in the Dutch underground, weren't they?
Yeah.
And so we have here the people crossing the border, and the tallest person is
an American.
an American, and Yoka has some funny stories to tell about our American habits which betray us.
Yes, your nice manners, we had to unlearn them. I mean, you say sorry whenever you bump into somebody or you treat them some tools, you say thank you without thinking. And that's what they did, or they would do if they were on the road, and which would be very, very dangerous. So we had to teach them not to say sorry, not to jingle coins or whatever they had in their pockets.
And not to be so
not
tall.
to look people, especially Germans, in the eye. Never look them in the eyes, then they won't recognize you very quickly. Well, also, and eating habits, of course. I mean, you are used to eating, cutting your meat with a knife, and then you put your knife away and you eat with your fork in your right hand.
Yes.
So they had to teach them eating with fork and knife in left and right hand, things like that. So we laughed a lot about that, about unlearning American manners. And for the English, of course, they had their own manners too, in the Canadians. But
Sure, but this Americans often were so tall they had to maybe try to stoop over a little bit.
yeah, and they had to teach him to walk with small steps, not big steps as long Americans are used to do. But take small steps, walk slowly, keep your hands crossed, keep your eyes cast down, and just walk slowly along with the other monks across the border. Yeah.
Yeah, an amazing picture to think that.
Yeah, it is a young Belgian boy who took the picture, but it was very, very dangerous for him to do that. I mean, it could have been his death. I mean, there was a real guard there, and there was a dog, police dog, and the monks would have been in danger. And yes, that was. But we are glad nowadays to have that picture of one of the ways to cross the border. And one of the other ways was to cross the River Maas with a rowing boat. And the two brothers who owned the rowing boat, they still have that boat in their back garden. I don't know if they are still alive, but the boat was there. So,
And that river Maas, M-A-A-S,
please,
what is the name of the river?
River Maas.
Maas
Maas.
is the border between the Netherlands
Yeah,
and
the
Belgium.
one part, yeah.
And then they would be turned over to the Belgian
And when
underground.
the washing on the Belgium side was hanging out with a red hanky, it was not safe to cross. But when the hanky, the red hanky was left, there was no red hanky on the washing line, it was safe to cross the river. That's how they worked. Yeah.
At one crossing place, at one of the crossing places. And we probably don't have time in this video to go into the final destination of all these people crossing from the Netherlands, Belgium, but in general, they were making their way down through France in the hopes,
France and
crossing
Switzerland or Spain.
many routes out
Yeah.
to get to Switzerland was a neutral country as well.
Yeah, but the difficulty was once they got to Switzerland,
What do you
they
do
were
then?
put into a camp and they had to cross France anyway to go over the Pyrenees
Yeah,
to Spain.
crossing the Pyrenees was
Yeah,
always
yeah.
the final
So it was
destination.
better to
Yeah.
go to the Pyrenees
Yes, and the line,
directly and not crossing the Swiss borders. Yeah.
and there have been many books written about this escape route. It was called the Comet Line, right?
There was a Comet Line and there was the White Brigade and there was in Liège there was another line, I don't know the name. But the Belgians, they had some experience in resistance work because they had World War One, France too. So we in Holland, we just had to do our best and make mistakes, of course. But
Make your way.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
but about more than 1,600 Allied air crew members who were shut down managed to get over the border to France and back. But
Through
3,000
Spain.
were in hiding. But many of them were caught in Belgium or in France or in the Pyrenees. Yeah.
Because we know that
Which
there were
was such a pity
spies.
because you had
Oh,
they had such a long way to go and everybody did the best they could and then some traitor would stand up or some silly thing happened.
yeah,
Well, there you are.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, would you like to talk about another perhaps interesting experience of your work in the resistance, or should we move to your capture, or would you like to,
Yeah, let's move on. Yeah,
to the
perhaps.
capture?
Yeah.
And how long were you able to work in the resistance before you were captured?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. I was 20 when I was caught.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then how long were you?
I was only 14 months in prison.
14 months is long enough.
Yeah, it was
14 months too long.
But the other people of the first group, I helped with the English people because those times in 42 the Americans weren't yet.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
You
so
were,
they were only
yeah, the
English
Americans
and,
hadn't
yeah,
come into the
yeah.
war yet.
Yeah.
So you were told us that you were captured through your mother.
Yeah, they had already. There was a traitor in Paris, and they managed to creep backwards down the line to Brussels, and there lots of people of the command were caught, and then up to Amsterdam, and then they caught the people of the first group, with the English people, the English air crew members I helped.
They caught them.
And caught them, yes, and they put, you know, they really were very good at putting little pieces together to form a whole. So
They interrogated those English airmen, huh?
yeah, but you know, little snippets from one they put
Yeah,
together
yeah,
with
yeah.
little snippets from another, and
Yes.
they were very clever. Gestapo, they had their schooling, of course, in interrogating. But the other people of that group, I didn't know I worked for. They had been in prison already for more than a year before they got to me, and they only knew my parents lived in Zeist, so they followed my mother. And my mother didn't expect or see anything, of course.
But they must have had a name.
Yeah.
They had your name.
And then they followed her to Amsterdam, where we would meet.
You met your
And,
mother there
At the station. We were just
at the railroad station.
hugging, and then we both got the handcuffs on, and my mother was sent as a hostage to the concentration camp of Vught, but in a special barrack for hostages.
What was the name
that's
of the
why
camp?
I didn't escape, because my mother was there as a hostage.
What was the name of the camp?
That was Vught concentration camp.
And it's in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it was in the south of Holland.
Yeah.
So that's why I had a chance to escape, but I didn't, because my mother was a hostage there, and she was freed after the trial. So, and then when she tried to
And
get
after
home,
your trial.
yeah.
Mhm.
But when she got home, the house was taken by the Germans. Her husband, my father, didn't live there anymore. He had to move in a few hours with all the hidden people the Germans didn't know about to another address. And he had to leave everything behind in the house.
Oh.
But to his amazement, after 6 months, they gave the house free again, and everything was still in it. It was really amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, they were lucky then.
Well, why don't we talk about your trial?
Oh yeah, the trial. We knew, of course, we would be condemned to death, because that was on all the posters. Everybody who helped shot down aircrew members, they were liable to get shot. So we did. I was condemned to be shot 1 time, and my friend Nell was condemned 2 times, and yet the other Dutch girl was condemned to death 3 times. I mean, I don't know how they...
How many times can you die?
How they would do that, but... and we were meant to be shot in September, and the German...
September of
chaplain-
what year?
In September, in Utrecht was the trial.
What year? 1942?
Of 1944.
44.
Yeah, in September 44. But then in Arnhem, the 9th of September in Arnhem, the Americans tried to capture the bridge, and the English had all the paratroopers coming down. There's a film about it, A Bridge Too Far. But the Germans panicked, and they put all the prisoners in the whole of Holland, from Amsterdam, from Leeuwarden, from Utrecht, we were in cattle cars. First time we traveled in cattle cars to Germany, but they forgot to put our papers along. We didn't know that, so without papers we were not welcome in Germany, because we had no papers and everything had to be in order. And we were put together with other prisoners who were condemned to death from Belgium and France, Denmark, from Norway. There was even an English lady.
And what was that prison camp
Who
name?
was married, I think, to a Danish count or something. We started there in Germany with the, well, you know, being shuttled around. Because the Russians were coming on and they would move us west again, and then from the south the Americans would move on and we were north again. So we were just moved on. And nobody wanted to keep us because there were no papers. But we didn't know that. So we just thought, well, every day can be our last day. And from the others who had their papers, their execution dates, so they were called in the morning or in the evening. So the group got less and less, fewer and fewer. And of course, with all the transportation in cattle cars, many of them got ill. We were hungry, we got ill. So when war ended, we were from the 300, more than 300, we were left with 30, 32. So
Of that particular group of Dutch people.
three girls.
Just
were
the
only
three.
Dutch.
You know, are
I
these...
don't know, but the men had another, but the three
Well,
Dutch girls, yeah.
I-
But
I-
we were in eastern Germany, and that's where the Russian liberated us.
But let's talk about some of the, how you kept your life together.
How we kept our
And
minds,
it was with the singing,
our life and minds
how you
together.
yeah. But first, before we do that, I want to ask you if you were the group called Shadows and Fog.
Yeah, and group, Night and Nebel. Yeah.
Say that again. And
Night and Mist,
Night
which
and
meant
Mist.
no names, they have to disappear, they're condemned to death. No contact, no Red Cross, no letters, nothing. So
It's because your papers were left behind, or was that on purpose? I'm not sure I understand about this
all the-
mess. You moved a lot.
that's why they moved us, because they were NN, Nacht und Nebel people. We had our NN number, and but they didn't know when the orders would come through for the whole group,
To
when
be
the Danish or when the Belgium or when the French people would be moved to Berlin, because Berlin was the place where all the executions took place, the hanging and the shooting. The hanging was awful, that's what the Belgians were afraid of. Yeah.
The hanging.
Of course, we were to be shot, so we, how funny it sounds, we felt ourselves lucky to be
That you would
shot.
be shot.
I mean, to be hanged is something else, but that's what happened. Well,
Night
the
and
people,
mist.
yeah, moving off to Berlin, and then you know it was the end of them. But we waited and we waited, and there never came an order for us. Yeah.
But that was through their own, in their own mistake that you didn't have papers. If you had
Yeah, that was
papers,
a mistake.
yeah.
After the war, the Germans handed over those papers to the Dutch Riot in Amsterdam. The Riot, the national, sort of museum, wartime museum.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And,
So your papers were found.
Yeah. So
By-
I got them at home. I don't have them with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you survive in that prison?
Ah, yes. When you were lucky, you had the white hanky. And I was so lucky to have a big white hanky from my father. And we managed to organize a needle. And then we pulled threads out of every sort of clothing we had, of other people's clothing, or pieces of cloth or threads we found on the barbed wire, and with short threads like that we embroidered, because we didn't have a pencil or a paper. We wanted to put down where we were, the time we spent there, and the important things that happened. So we embroidered cattle cars, of course, and here it is.
This looks like something
Those
like
are
that.
small presents we
Okay,
gave each
okay.
other. Yeah.
Well, this is, I'm unable to read because it's in Dutch or to distinguish, but is that your hanky?
Yeah,
Your
that is
very
my
own.
hanky, yeah.
And when I something about what those sit for. There's the paper clip.
The paperclip, of course, in Scheveningen, where the solitary confinement was. And then we moved to Vught, the concentration camp, and I had to work on radio lamps, radio. Yeah, but that was for a short time. But you got an extra piece of bread for that, so that, and I was lucky to get that work. And then for the trial to Utrecht, and we always sang songs.
Oh, I love that.
Songs. I have it all down in the little booklet with new.
Yeah, I
at
think we
last
want to
knew
talk about those songs, yeah.
more than, I think, 200 songs, because we we learned songs from the Belgian people and the French people.
And would you sing when you were in your cells?
And,
in your individual
yeah.
cells, the voices would come together.
Yeah,
through
and when we were put together, the three of us, that was very lucky, of course, because then we could, it was sort of close harmony, yeah. And they always wanted us to sing the children's songs, you know, songs for children, you sing for your own children. And we always ended up with Die Gedanken sind frei.
That's pretty ironic, isn't it? Because that's a German song, and Die Gedanken sind frei.
Mostly
Your
we
thoughts give
sang
you
in the
power.
evening when it was a difficult time between light and dark, and everybody got homesick and a bit sad. And then the French, or we only spoke French. It was the only language everybody could speak. So some French voices would call, les Hollandais, chantez s'il vous plaît. And then we would go along.
And what?
Yeah.
Tell
Even
us.
if we were tired or sick, or but you know, we had the feeling we have to. And the funny thing is that we felt better after the singing than before. So
Yes.
we hope the others would feel better too. Yeah.
Did they not tell you no singing? The Germans, did they not stop that?
They never stopped it. Never. And when you tried to speak to the others, they would shout van mal halten or whatever curse they had. But the singing, they didn't understand it, of course. Because sometimes we put messages in the songs, that the Russians are nearing, or the Americans are already at 20 kilometers. That was,
So that's what probably kept your hope up. You knew that the Germans were losing the war.
Yeah. And after the war, we put all the songs together and some poems.
Just tell us some of the other songs. Die Gedanken sind
And
frei.
lots of songs from Vera Lynn. Because one of the other girls was in a special prison, the one who was condemned to death 3 times. She was put in a special prison with special, and she had a radio to listen to the Dutch wireless, but she didn't. She was very handy. She listened to the English radio.
Yeah.
So she knew a lot of Vera Lynn songs. We will meet again, and all those songs. So we learned even the songs from Vera Lynn.
Don't know when, don't know where.
Yeah.
Someday we'll meet
Together some
again.
sunny day.
Some sunny day.
Yeah.
Teeny sings that one too.
Yeah.
And for the younger folks that might be looking at this, Vera Lynn was the voice of England, wasn't she? The voice of victory, the voice
sure,
of
it was the voice of freedom.
the voice of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and we learned of
wonderful
course songs
music.
from all the other girls.
But
we
you would
spoke
always put
about-
them in French.
And we spoke about, all in French. And we spoke about recipes because we were always so hungry. We always spoke about food and nice recipes. Yes. And we embroidered small presents from nothing for people who had their birthdays or were a bit sad or were ill. Presents you could hide in your hand or somewhere in your
And these are
clothes.
some examples of some
Like
of
the
these.
hanky we used to, when there was some inspection or we had to be transported, put the hanky together in one hand and were sniffing along with the hanky. And nobody ever asked, let me see that hanky. So that hanky survived all the transportations and inspections. And the men made beautiful hankies too, with big sailing boats and cars and things like that. And we just did our way.
And here's a little
That's the
flag,
Dutch,
somebody,
yeah.
and God knows where you found the
And it
different
was a present
colors.
for the Swiss girl, from the Swiss lady who spoke so beautifully French.
Yeah.
She came from Geneva, and the most beautiful French is spoken in that region. And she was married to a Belgian and had 2 grown-up sons, and all 3 of them were flying in the Royal Air Force, and she was in Belgium in the resistance. But she was really, it was amazing. She could tell us for 1 hour or 2 hours a story about a film or a book. You could ask her anything. Tell us the story about
Gone with the Wind.
Gone with the Wind, or tell us a story about a book of Dickens, because she was very well read. And then she would just, well, get on with her beautiful French and tell along for 1 hour or 2 hours.
And you were lined up in separate cells.
Separate cells, or
but you
one,
could hear
sometimes in cellars with all straw mattresses and everything,
all together.
with lots of people. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But she
So
was
you could
really
hear
amazing.
her.
That's the Swiss flower, huh?
Yeah.
And this was our prison thing.
Your prison
uniform. Yeah.
made from that.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
cut off a piece because when you put up the hem,
Yeah.
you have a piece
A facing.
that way when you put it very short. We were not
And this looks
allowed
like
to,
a
of
prison
course.
number.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are more things that were
Yeah.
made. And I think Lois will want to take smaller pictures of those.
Yeah.
It looks like this might be
And
the
then you can
names
put
of
it
all
out
the
of-
women.
Yeah, those are the names of
Of the women in the
yeah,
prison.
French and Belgian names are there.
Yeah.
That was a present too. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Wow. So that kept you alive.
That kept us busy.
Kept
I
you
mean,
busy.
not only our hands, but our minds too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you were glad to have we exchanged colors, and red were very precious, very precious. And the fact that we once found a red thread on the barbed wire, that was something. And we could exchange a short piece of red thread for a piece of bread. So,
That shows how
so
valuable
precious
that
was a red thread. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. So you were liberated by the Russians.
Russians, yeah. But we were lucky because
The needle in the hand.
the needle.
Okay, we're going to back up to speak again about the embroidery, about where
How
she
we-
hid the needle.
We hit the needle in the palm of our hand, just like a blister. You don't feel it when you just push it just under the skin. You won't feel it, and they won't find it. And then we had in the other hand we had the crumpled hanky, so we were safe with our hanky and our dates and names and yeah.
And
Because we thought, not having a pencil or a paper, we can leave that behind. Somebody will find it and perhaps send it on to our people, and then they will know how we managed and where we were.
and how did you bring these things home?
Because we were liberated, these were
yes.
from the last place.
The last
so we were
place.
very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, but there's many more things like this which you had to leave
because
behind.
this is a bit bigger. And,
Yeah. So tell us about the liberation.
Yeah, and the Red Cross came along for the Danish people, for the Norwegian people, for the French people, for the Belgian people, and we just waited. And no Red Cross, they arranged trucks with an open loading, how do you call it? So people had to climb up, and then they would drive to the American sector.
But
Germany.
they only came for each
Yeah.
nationality, and they didn't seem to come for
and
the
they
Netherlands.
said to us, just come along and hop along and it'll be all right. But we found an older Dutch woman in the last prison, and she had been in prison for 4 years. And she was laying on a mattress and she couldn't move. She was so rheumatic, it was awful. And we didn't want to leave her back. So we thought we will wait for the Dutch Red Cross and then we can care for Fafa. But going on all those trucks with Fafa, that wouldn't do, it would hurt her too
Going on
much.
all those trucks with what?
With the Belgium or the French or with the other people. So we always said no, because we can't leave Fafa
That was her
behind.
name.
We can't do that. And they left their ill people with us because they thought, well, the Dutch Red Cross will come along and perhaps there will be better possibilities to move the ill people. So
And
we
did
had
they come?
a lot of ill people to look after,
Yeah.
waiting for our Red Cross, which didn't arrive. And then they told us the Russians were assembling all non-German nationalities who were roaming about Germany trying to get home, and put them into camps, and the camps would have to be moved to labor camps farther away in Russia, so we didn't want that. So we thought we have to put the ill people into hospital, and that's what we did. And we asked the reverend to, the doctor was not very nice, but there was a very nice reverend who belonged to the hospital, and he promised us to look after them. And we took all
Wait,
their
was it a
names.
German hospital?
Yeah, of course, in that,
Yeah, of
in that
course.
last city. Yeah. And the reverend promised us to look after them, and we took all their names and things along to send to their families once we got home. And
Well, then how
we
did
couldn't
you
walk
leave?
very much because
No.
we were just walking skeletons, so I thought we have to go to the river Elbe, and then we will steal a rowing boat, and then we will drift down the river, and then we will get into the American sector of Germany. So we didn't have to steal a rowing boat because there were some Dutch barges were stranded there because all the bridges were down, so they couldn't move. And the Dutch barge people, they found us, and he said, you can have a rowing boat with 1 oar, because the other rowing boat with 2 oars, our sons have already gone down the river Elbe.
But they had one rowing boat left with 1 oar.
Yeah.
So you took it?
So, and then we went with that rowing boat down the river Elbe. But
How many
know,
people? The 3 of you?
3 of us and 1 man from the men's prison. There was a men's prison, there was a Dutchman there too, who was a sailor who tried to get to England but was caught on the North Sea. So he knew all about boats and rowing.
Oh, that was good.
And he said he would look after us. I mean, he was walking skeleton too, but it didn't matter for his. He said, "I will look after you. I'm the man of the morning." Oh, we have been laughing.
Yes.
Yeah, but then the Russians shot at us from the side, so we had to.
Why did they do that?
Because they were gathering everybody and everything they saw were not Germans and put them in the camp.
But did you just say they shot at you?
They shot at us.
Well,
yeah.
did they think
So
you
we
were
really-
Germans?
We couldn't move. No, the Russians. The Russians,
No.
they were all there. There was Russian.
I
Eastern
understand why I
Germany
asked why
was
they,
occupied by the Russians.
yeah, why
with,
they,
with horses, and they didn't have. That's why they moved so fast. The Russians. They didn't have to have their food sent along or whatever. They had their horses, they had their tanks, they had their things, and they got their food on the way by farms or people or cities or whatever. So that's why they could move so fast and get to Berlin first.
that was a big race to get to
Yeah,
Berlin.
that was a
but
big race.
I-
And of
I-
course they were faster because they only had their horses and their tanks and they just could move along and get their food on the way.
But I asked you why they shot at you. Did they think you were Germans?
No. We had to row with the oar to steer, and then they put us into that camp. They didn't ask our nationality.
I see.
German, no,
They
no
put you-
German into the camp.
Into a camp?
They didn't ask our nationalities, they didn't ask our names, they didn't ask why we were roaming about in Germany.
Right.
And that's for the first time when we felt lost.
Yeah.
I mean, not
Here-
having your name, okay, but not having a number, then you
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
nobody.
Nobody.
And they just counted us, the people who, big camp, all barracks again, barbed
It's
wire
like
again,
being back in the
all
prison
men
camp.
walking around there from Eastern Europe too. And it was raining, and they just counted because there had to be 3,000 in this camp, 4,000 in the camp up, and I think 5,000 in the camp down south. But we were in the camp with the 4,000. So we thought it was getting dark, and there was a cart standing against one of the barracks, and it was a dry place. So we thought we will spend the night there, and in the morning we will see what this is all about. So when we woke up in the morning, there were all men's legs standing around the card, and the Dutch voice said, "Are you the crazy girls who got down the river Elbe too?" They were the sons of the, because they were caught too from
The
people.
barge people's sons.
And word got around, they got 3 girls on a rowing boat on the Elbe, and so they thought we must get them because they are Dutch and we will look after them, because they had been on the barge, they were well fed, they were healthy, and they had a real room with beds, with straw.
Even in the prison camp.
In the barracks.
We don't call it a prison camp, but refugee.
The prison camp, and they took us in their room, and we got their beds, and they slept on the table and under the table, and we got their beds.
And did you get food?
And they got us food, yeah. They had made a little fire with wood, and they stole out of the camp in the night, and they stole at farms milk and eggs and meat and everything. And 5 times a day they would cook some food, and they would give you the lid and call, "Girls, eat," and we would eat.
So
1 pound a day. We all
You
came,
gained.
grew. We
Yeah,
grew.
yeah.
Really. And they protected us from the Russians, because they wanted the girls to go peeling tomatoes and whatever else. So when we went to the one faucet to wash it, there was always the Dutch man standing there with the
Protecting
back
you.
so he could wash. And,
Yeah.
and the Russians had no chance to get at it. They really were marvelous. Yeah.
Yeah, that your Dutch
They're really
protectors.
I still have contact with one of the grandsons of one of those barge with our stories in it too, and he made a book of it. And last year he sent the book to me. He said, "Will interest you."
Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful,
nice, But
wonderful.
they were really marvelous. Yeah.
So how did you leave
And then
that
we
camp?
were lucky again. I mean, really lucky, because the Americans had the camp full of Russians.
Wait, the Americans.
And Americans, say 4,000, with a camp with 4,000 Europeans, the Russians. So, and ours was the camp with 4,000.
With
Because the
4,000
3 or the 3 and the 5.
Europeans.
So we were exchanged. We had to walk. We got 1 piece of bread and to walk. And
A long
one
walk?
of the girls, had a wound on her leg, so we got a little card and we put her leg. There's a photo on it too. And on the way, well, we stole food too, because marching to the exchanging place, we had to get food to walk. We all had to walk.
Sure.
So.
So that was the
stole
exchange.
food.
So then you here.
Yeah, this is. So that's how we carted her along.
Imagine.
So we couldn't leave her behind too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God love her.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the 3 Dutch girls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then you got to the American sector.
No. We got to there was a pontoon bridge, you know.
A pontoon bridge.
Pontoon bridge.
Yeah.
And we had to walk at the same time to exchange.
Oh, across.
The Russians, and we went the other way. And once we were with the American, the next day we were on a plane to Brussels.
Were you?
I mean, it was all very.
Very quick.
The Americans really were marvelous. Yeah. And then we were put in a Red Cross center in Brussels, because they didn't know that if our families were still alive, because they lived in the bad part of Holland, where the hungry part. Yeah.
Oh my.
And then the Queen Wilhelmina was in Brussels, and she wanted to meet us because
Is that your Dutch queen?
our Dutch Queen, because she heard from one of her in her following, you know, our strange story, 3 girls being condemned to death, floating down the river Elbe in a rowing. She wanted to hear that story.
Yeah.
So he came along the adjutant, and he said, "Well,
But there came along what?
the adjutant, her adjutant, how do you call it? One of her following in a beautiful uniform, you know."
Oh yeah, Archduke.
He said, "That's a difficult question."
Archduke.
Yeah. The Queen wants to meet you tomorrow, but once a week there is a truck going over the rivers to the north of Holland, and the truck, you could get papers for you to get on the truck, otherwise you have to wait a week. So what do you want, meeting the Queen or going home? And
what
we
did
said
you-
going home.
Going home. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what they did.
Hmm.
And they were still alive, yeah, all our family.
Your parents were still
Yeah,
alive.
it's all in the book. That's all in the book. that
Which
all.
book?
The walls came tumbling down.
Yeah, that's the book
Yeah.
we have to read. The Walls Came Tumbling Down, because it's
It's-
written by one of
One of
the three of you.
Yeah, and all three wrote, every day there was another one of us who wrote a piece about that day, you know.
Yeah.
So, and then she
Was
went
it
to
this
work.
one who wrote the book?
No, yet, the other one,
Mhm.
Jet wrote it.
Mhm.
So, and she went to work for Time and Life in New York after the war, and she asked us permission to put our stories,
Mhm.
to put our stories in a book,
Mhm.
to write the whole story, not just day by day. Well, she did quite a nice job, I think, in English, of course.
Yes.
It got a prize too, yeah.
Yeah.
So we were glad for her.
Yeah.
And she was the only one who could do it, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Because she was very well versed in English, of course. I mean, if she had written the book in Dutch, it wouldn't have sold. I mean, nobody was interested. The first 20 years after the war, nobody spoke about the war. The war was gone, it was finished, and we had to get on.
Yeah. And
So nobody would have been interested in the Dutch
Isn't that
version of the
interesting?
book.
Yeah.
So
But
she said,
now there's a lot of interest.
yeah, now, yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Now.
because now it's a piece of history.
It's a piece of
But
history.
then it was too
Yeah.
painful, and
I
well,
think
let's
in-
just get on.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Too
that's what we
painful.
did.
Yeah, when did we meet?
You did get.
After the war, but I heard about you during the war.
Yeah,
That's
oh
true,
yes.
and I was very curious about you. Having heard so many good stories about you, I wanted to meet that person.
But did you have a name?
Well,
Did you know-
Teeny,
you knew Teeny?
from Friesland, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And everything was always all right here.
Yeah.
but
That's what I heard, yeah.
I think I came through more easily than you did, because I lived at the very end of the what they say, the string of pearls. The very end, I mean, and they had to look very, very long along the whole line before they got to me.
That's when we got the medals in The Hague.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they're photographed. over
Yeah, that's
there.
right, yes.
yeah. But
yeah.
when Teeny speaks of the string of pearls, I think she's talking about
The line,
a
the
metaphor.
escape line.
The escape line. Teeny was far back
That's it, yeah.
on the
And
string
I
of
was
pearls.
at the very end of it,
The beginning.
or the very beginning, yes.
The very beginning.
At the very
Yeah.
beginning, and
And
I think
it
that's
was
why.
hard to get to her.
No,
So she was
I
not,
didn't need to.
no, so she was not captured.
Yeah.
And she said she had an easier time than you did.
Oh, that's,
What do we have here?
We have the
Other-
pictures of the medals.
Yeah, is this when you met? When you got
that's
the,
when we first met, but
Oh yeah,
that was
yeah.
such an official doing that, you know, we each had our families with us, our parents. I think your parents were there too. Huh?
when you
My
got the
parents
medal?
were there,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
This
Yeah.
time?
So we didn't have a chance to meet and to talk,
Yeah.
but I knew she was there, and I wanted to meet her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Teeny told us about you, about the three women who moved through Nacht and Nebel. Is that
Ah.
right?
Yeah,
Say that in English, night and fog.
yeah, night and fog.
Yeah, I was so intrigued by this story. I wanted to know more.
And
I was at the end.
I remember you there, and I had,
Yeah, both
had
at the end.
a suit, a skirt and a jacket made from an old costume of my father.
Oh yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a cousin who made that suit for me.
Because there was no way to get clothing.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's it, yeah.
Yeah. So now I can see it. It was a light suit, and I was very, very, very proud of it.
Oh, bet you were.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
bet you were.
Yeah.
And so maybe we look then at the medals because you both got some of these.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Both got the American medals, the Medal of Freedom,
The Medal of Freedom
And,
from the United States government.
and
Is it one of
yeah,
these?
there is an yes with
That
the
is,
palm
that's
on
it.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a gold palm, and there was a silver palm, and a
Yeah.
bronze palm, and no palm.
I have Yoko has a gold palm, and I have a silver palm.
Yes.
Could you
It
hold it
was,
up so I can see it?
Right.
All right.
And
Don't
the
you-
English medals was on another time, but this was very impressive for us.
Oh, this was very.
Oh,
Yes, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
I think the United States, they do so many things quite wrong and not
yeah.
not very very pleasant. But this was really a good
Yeah.
a great event. Yeah, they made a great event of it. Yeah, with all the soldiers lining up, and they paraded for us.
Oh yeah, but they are not
And then Yoko said to me, I think this is more scary than traveling through the Netherlands with a couple of Americans during the war.
More scary than taking a couple Americans on the escape line.
Yeah, it's good.
Why don't you each say something about how this experience determined the rest of your, how this
the rest
influenced
of our lives.
the rest of your
Oh,
life?
sure.
Teeny always says it was not the only experience in her life, but it certainly was important.
Yes, it was important, but it's not the only. No. I always say afterwards, I had such a good life and a life that was worthwhile. So I mean, I cannot say for this is the highlight in my life. I had a highlight in my life when I was 20 or 21. No.
But it did something about what you believe in your life, I think.
Yes.
Because now I know Teeny always works for Amnesty and International and writes letters
Yeah.
to free political
Peter
prisoners.
too, yes.
And you do that
Of
too.
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the emergency fund for writers in prison.
Do you?
Yeah, for the
Teeny,
pen.
can you turn toward Lois a little bit so your voice
Yeah.
goes good? The emergency
Okay, I
fund
mean,
for writers in prison.
The pen organization, you know.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Well,
Yes.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that is worthwhile. And Yoko and I both have been for a couple of years going to schools to to tell the students and the little children what it was to have a war and what it was to have racism and
And what are the important things? I mean, what is important in life? Eh?
Yeah.
That's what I try to tell them. I mean, friendship, to trust each other.
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
Yes.
And yeah, of course, I mean freedom, but that's such a wide word. I mean, you have to split that up in freedom of speech and freedom to go around on your bike when you speak to children. But the friendship and the trust, I think that's very
Well, that was built,
Yeah.
that friendship and trust was learned in
Yeah,
those
sure.
years.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, learned in those
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how to cope with difficult situations. I mean, don't panic, but just try to think it through.
I'll bet. That's-
That was something too,
Yes.
for me at least. Yeah.
Yes, and I always have thought, I know Teeny a little bit longer, that she had that ability to this day to be practical and have common sense and think slowly and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be important.
yeah, doing the right thing that you had
And do
figured
the
out
right
it would
thing
be
out of
best.
your heart. I mean, not only thinking with your brains, but, well, your feelings, your heart, it's very important.
And yoga, I think that you would have the same as I, that we were not fired in the underground because of hatred.
Yeah.
And because
That was not your reason.
not because of revenge.
Yeah.
We wanted to save people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there were also were people in the underground. I mean, they did wonderful work, but whose idea was much more revenge
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
and understandable.
Understandable.
Yeah,
Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah, and I mean thinking back, that's always that you think, have we won the war, or didn't, better not won the war, not to lose the loved ones? I mean, that's always the difficult question. I mean, if we hadn't done something in the war, hadn't known all those people who died in the war, were executed or died anyway, well, would we have been feeling better or not? I mean, that's a difficult. You don't want to lose ones you love, but
It's a terrible cost, a price.
it was a high price.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Because so many are lost. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, oh yes,
it
oh
was the
yes.
difficult thing after the war when you heard, oh, this died,
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
not more anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That was very, very sad. Yeah.
Very
Sure.
sad.
And then you always ask, why not me? I mean, they
Yeah.
are perhaps better people than I am. I mean, that's always the question. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
I still don't understand why I'm still alive at 85. I like it. It's still very interesting, but
Yeah.
I'm still wondering, well, why do I live as long as this? And
To tell your story.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you gained something too during the war. I'm 68, 86 years old, and I have a sister who is 74, but that is a Jewish girl that was hiding with us, was a little
Yeah.
girl during the war, but she's still my sister.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's a widow now, and so we talk to each other more often on the phone, and we visit, and we have, when her grandchildren have a bar mitzvah, I'm invited too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a wonderful
Yeah.
effects of a war too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And she's living in Holland, isn't she?
Yeah,
In this country.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Should we bring in the
Well,
parachute to go around?
Here's the
And there's where the piece is missing? Or over there?
Oh, it will just.
Yeah. So
You know,
the
when it's
parachute
outside
was,
and the wind is blowing, it will just,
Yeah.
beautiful.
it'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
The parachute was an important
I think
symbol.
thousands of children have played with this and
Yeah.
felt the silk and,
Yeah.
and Marco Polo.
Because they're made of silk, the parachute is, right?
Yeah, it's real silk. Yeah.
It's real silk. And
And even the boys like to touch it and to feel it. Eh? Yeah, because nowadays or after the war they were all made of.
Teeny has a blouse made from a part of a parachute. Put in there. And Yoka
yes, just
had part of her.
one piece. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Just,
Because the
like
parachute
this till the other seam.
symbolized
seam. Yeah, just
the
a
freedom,
piece,
I
yeah.
suppose. Do you know whose parachute it was?
No.
Uh,
I can't remember.
But for your time, it might have been an Englishman.
It was on the attic at my parents' house,
Was it?
and I think one of the English ones left it there.
Mm-hmm.
Zo, daar gaan we naar horen. Hè? Die kan het foto. And all in the little back again.
Known warrior.